Good morning, everybody. It's 12 minutes past 8 o'clock right now, and yes, it is time for Party Scoopers to talk a little politics here, but in a fun and slightly competitive way, Michelle.
That's right. Jeff Blake and Greg Robinson joining us
Wait a
here
minute, you're
this morning.
very threatening.
Yeah, I doubt that.
Yeah, no. So we're getting through again. We made it through another set of debates.
Yep.
So what was your take?
Well, it was our first single debate, and we had all 10 candidates on the stage. Like we talked about last week, I think Biden had a lot of arrows pointed his direction. Julian Castro seemed to be the one wanting to carry.
Didn't know where the line was. Maybe went a
and I think he did step over the line. I think you're going to see polls come out in the next week that I think he's going to take some hits for the attacks on Biden, and in fact, I think it was to Biden's advantage to have someone kind of go over the line on the attacks, and it made people feel empathetic towards him. But I think he handled those pretty well. I think Elizabeth Warren had a good night. I think Mayor Pete Buttigieg had a good night. The jury's still out on whether Beto O'Rourke is going to get a little bump out of this or not. He's become very impassioned about.
Well, every
gun
Democrat took time to praise Beto. In this debate, and as I watch this, I understand why you feel the need to do it, especially when you're talking about, gun issues, Second Amendment issues, and everything that went on in his hometown. But it's one of those deals. As I felt like they were actually like, hey, helping this guy back up. Careful what you do here. I mean, I remember back in 2008 when John McCain was kind of finished, and there was a debate, and Romney and everyone else was really nice to John McCain.
Right.
And sometimes politics needs to be a ruthless. If you can get someone out of the field, you better, because you don't know. And in that instance, John McCain came roaring back.
Because you don't know when somebody's going to get momentum.
And he got momentum out of that debate. Now, I don't know if Beto got a lot of momentum out of this, but I did think he got a free pass and was given a lot of opportunities to speak on those issues, and who knows, he could be a problem for some of these candidates.
For any candidate that's not the front runner, the goal right now is to hang around, hang around, and see if something happens to Biden or to Warren or to Sanders. The three that have been in
the big
front.
three, yeah.
Because if there is something that happens, if there's a gaffe or some big news event that brings their vote down, it's anybody's ball game.
People will start to look elsewhere, and that's why every presidential race is a war of attrition, but especially if you're in a field of 10 or 12 candidates. I really just appreciated the fact that I could do this all in one night.
Right, and not have to plan
and see them all on the same stage. I thought, I too thought Elizabeth Warren had a good night, and again, I think she's a real problem for Biden in this race, and I think she's a real problem for everyone, actually.
Now, for the Republican standpoint on this, what is your overall opinion on what's happening?
Here's my overall I tweeted this. I said, look, the RNC should just cancel its tracker program, that if these Democrat candidates are going to go on stage, whether it's a 7-hour climate thing on CNN or these long debates and espouse all these kind of very liberal policies, that then, we used to have to pay people to go to events to get them on tape saying crazy stuff, and then we'd say, look at this crazy thing they said, they're unelectable. Well, now they just flock to CNN. And they say it for us. And on 1080, and
I'd argue that
save yourself some time and money.
Right. Candidates saying crazy stuff doesn't really matter as much as it used to.
That's maybe fair.
We might have a president who says crazy stuff all the time. He did this.
Well, Democrats don't need any trackers either.
He did this week on this whole Saudi Arabia oil attack, and here's another. And I think in his mind, he wants to keep people guessing. I think that's what he's trying to do.
You really think he's thinking that far ahead?
Well, he promised that in the campaign. He said, I'm never going to telegraph what I'm going to do in foreign policy. He said this. So that's why one day he irrationally says Saudi Arabia was attacked, the American military is locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded, right.
Okay. That's pretty provocative language for a tweet. And then today he said, I don't want to go to war. Now, he thinks he's being crafty and shifty and not sending a message to anybody. But we have allies that rely on the word of the President of the United States, no matter who it is. We have friends around the world that rely on what the President of the United States. Like, this is not a game where you're just trying to be cagey. Like, the entire world is watching what the president says, and I think he just needs to be aware of that and put the Twitter down and actually articulate a policy about how we're going to deal with crises around the world, and he's terrible at that.
But there was a talking head that said that being locked and loaded did not mean necessarily ready to go to war.
But he wanted to leave the impression that that's where he was.
If you look at his actions, though, I mean, this is a president that is hesitant to engage. There's been a lot of instances,
and his whole campaign is about isolationism and getting out of.
And so I agree. I think this is someone who sends a lot of mixed messages, especially if you're on social media. But I think if you look at his actions throughout his 2 years here, he's pretty hesitant. And again, and last week we had the news that he fired John Bolton, his national security advisor. John Bolton is someone who would say, I mean, we would already bomb something if John Bolton had his way.
Yeah, but at the same time, he said he was locked and loaded. He also said, if this is going to cause a problem, we're going to tap the reserves a little bit to give everybody a break. Wasn't that basically what he said?
Well, yeah, he said a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
He also said that that the news media is putting out fake news that he would sit down with Iran without any conditions. Well, he has told reporters that directly on camera. He's quoted, Pompeo has said this, Pence has said this. Now he's saying, I never said it. So he says a lot of things. Like, you just can't really believe it.
Foreign policy is incredibly complicated, and the president is not someone who really wades too far into the deep end of complicated policies. It's all kind of on the surface. It's Twitter type messages.
And he doesn't care about history.
Well, look, it's a complicated world, and I mean, part of me is relieved that he's not has an itchy trigger finger, because you could really get yourself into problems pretty quick.
Well, an interesting sidebar about John Bolton. Of course, Bolton is the national security advisor, and as Craig said, he definitely has a trigger finger. He is hawkish. His first instinct is to use military strikes, and I think that was part of the conflict with Trump. But of course, Trump famously now has said, well, I fired John Bolton. Bolton put out a tweet that said, I offered to resign the night before I was fired, and the president said, don't do that, let's think about it.
Really?
So he wanted to have the upper hand on that decision, too. So, interesting set of situations.
And on that note.
Well, and the big thing coming up, of course, this Saturday, we have 20 candidates, I believe, in town at the Polk County Democratic Steak Fry at Waterworks Park. It's like Saturday from noon to 4. They've already sold 11,000 tickets.
Oh,
this is going to be
Wow.
a massive event.
Wow.
The Polk County Democrats have done a great job of organizing this event in the past. It ought to be quite a scene to take a look at how these campaigns are going to sort of rally their supporters and demonstrate support. And you're going to have 11,000 people. Wow. Look out for parking.
Hope it's dry.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.